Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette, and today I am thrilled to introduce you to Dr. Rain Masa, a brilliant colleague, friend, and NIH-funded researcher whose career journey is nothing short of inspiring. Stay tuned for an insightful and energizing conversation, one that was so rich I had to split it into two parts. In part one, we dive into Rain's early journey into research, the pivotal moments that shaped his path, and the mindset that has fueled his success. You're going to love this. Let's get started. Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. The truth is, the grant writing process isn't always clear, but with the right guidance, proven actionable strategies, and expert insights, the process becomes easier, simpler, and yes, clearer. I am Dr. Trinette, your host of Grant Writing Made Clear, and a former nonprofit president turned distinguished professor and behavioral scientist with 2 decades of grant writing experience. I remember what it was like to be a busy nonprofit leader with little time but big financial sustainability concerns. Over the years, I have transformed my skills from securing $1,000 foundation grants to winning multi-million-dollar federal grants. I created this podcast in response to the grant writing coaching requests I've received from nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, and professors over the years. Join me each week as I reveal insider strategies and share key lessons that turn wishful thinking into winning applications. Pull up a seat and get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Whether you're a beginner or a pro looking to sharpen your skills and create a life you love, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette, and today we are joined by my colleague and friend, Dr. Rain Masa. Rain, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know you're super busy, so many grants you're managing. And so I do appreciate your time today. I thought we would start off with you introducing yourself and briefly telling us about your current role, as well as kind of like your trajectory to get to this role.
Yeah. So I'm Rain Masa. I'm an associate professor at the School of Social Work at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm also the research director for the Global Social Development Innovations Center. My work focuses mostly on the intersection of economic security, stigma, and HIV, both in the United States and in LMICs, low and middle income
Mhm,
countries.
mhm.
In terms of how I have gotten to where at least my research or my interest in research, I think when I got my MSW back in 2008,
Was that
I
at
s- at
Uh-huh,
Washington
uh-huh,
University, I
uh-huh.
started working at a research center, the Center for Social Development, and I think that's where I first understood the
Mhm,
value of having a PhD, having
mhm,
research skills,
mhm,
because I was definitely not grasping a lot of the things that they're talking about when they talk
mhm,
about
mhm,
design methods. And so, that led me to apply for to a PhD program, and I got connected with some of the faculty members who were at CSD back then, including our colleague and friend, Dr. Gina Choa.
mhm.
And that's how, my trajectory started in terms of doing global research and research focusing on, HIV and economic security.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know that you've had multiple awards, including NIH funding, which is incredible. I'm curious because I know a lot of PhD programs do not teach grant writing. So would you talk a little bit about any formal training you've had in grant writing in particular?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I remember We had one. It's not a grant writing class. It's Mark Fraser's class,
Uh-huh.
SOO 940,
Yeah.
in which that was my first exposure to writing an NIH. It was an R21. We were asked to write an R21.
Mhm.
But other than that, I didn't really have any proper training. I think
Mhm.
it was just learning on the job, you
Okay.
know, reading and being mentored by senior investigators on, this is how you should frame your research questions. So I learned it on the job, really.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. And if there were some grant writing classes I attended, I don't remember. I don't remember
Yeah.
because I think, like, writing, NIH grants, I've learned it, when I started as an assistant professor. It was, yeah, learning on the job from people who have successfully competed and received multiple NIH funding,
Mhm.
and people who, themselves are successful grant writing or grant, writers, and I've picked up some of some of the themes, across multiple people, like making sure that what you're doing is not overly ambitious, right? So
Yeah.
it's those are the things that I didn't learn from like a classroom-based grant writing class,
Yeah.
but more, what do they call it? Explicit
Yeah.
curriculum of the
Yeah.
PhD program or being in
Yeah.
academia. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does sound like you learned it by just giving it a shot with good mentorship, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And mentorship, because we I mean, we have so many mentors. I've had a lot of mentors. Some were assigned to me, some, I sought them.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a difference between a mentor who is interested, particularly for a junior, when I was a junior faculty, interested in your development, because it takes
Mm.
time. It takes time to read our grants. It takes
Mm.
time to
It
really
does.
provide
Yeah.
feedback. And yeah, I mean, I at first I was like, well, this so and so faculty professor from this school, yes, they're great. They have all these accolades, but they're not really helping.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I was a bit frustrated, but
Mm.
I understand now it's not because they don't want, well, not because they don't think, or it's not about me, it's just that they don't have the time,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
to really provide that mentorship.
Yeah.
And so it also has taken me time to find mentors,
Mhm.
particularly, senior investigators with NIH funding to really help
Yeah.
me, polish my ability to compete successfully. And
Yeah.
I've just been very thankful that they've been very patient and really interested in helping me develop my ability to also write grants.
Yeah. Rain, that resonates with me so much because I have a similar story that mentorship is so important. It has helped me get where I am. But like you, there was a period of time where I was trying to build relationships with a lot of big name people who have tons and tons and tons of grants. And I appreciate them and they were helpful, but they did not have the time that others who maybe had a small portion of their success, but they were willing to give me more of their time, which I appreciated. So
Mhm.
how did you, I guess, select your mentors? How did you find these mentors and kind of settle on those who both had knowledge and success and experience, but
Yeah.
also the time?
Yes. So I think, my situation, I think when I graduated, when I got my PhD, it's not the most common of, being able to transition from where I got my degree, my doctoral degree.
Mhm.
And so I think there was that mentorship that was already built in that I
Yeah.
started when I entered the doctoral program. And fortunately, it has evolved into something that I think it also depends on the mentor to be able to be comfortable, because, sometimes when we become colleagues, especially when, in the beginning I was a student, there can still be a lot of ways that how would I deal with this person? How do we interact now? I've never had that issue because I
Mm.
think my mentor and myself, we know boundaries. We didn't have
Mhm.
to be told like your colleagues now, you're not a student
Yeah.
anymore. And then I think so that was a natural evolution of just having that mentorship. Obviously I owe a lot to Gina for having introduced me to Zambia because
Mm.
I feel like she's always told me I don't want to just work in Zambia because I'm from there and I don't want to be
Okay.
seen or perceived as, favoring Zambia. And I'm like, yes, I understand that. But the way she introduced me to the people there, the work that's being done there, I think has really solidified my connection there.
Mhm.
So that was one thing. I think the other thing is particularly for social work, it was challenging to find a mentor, a senior HIV investigator. I should take that back a little bit. It's not because UNC we have a Center for AIDS Research, so we have the big names, right?
Yeah.
In HIV, both social and behavioral science, biomedical, epidemiological, everything.
Mhm.
And I was fortunate enough to be introduced by Gina to Carol Golan, who was at that time the director of the social and behavioral core at CFAR.
Mm.
And so through Carol, I was introduced to other researchers who are doing work primarily in Southern Africa, Zambia, South Africa, Malawi, because that's where I wanted to do my research. But I think this is where, they were so busy that I was a junior faculty. I needed, I'm very green about
Mhm.
writing NIH grants.
Mhm.
This was the time that I felt like I could benefit from their experience because they are also successful HIV researchers with multiple NIH funding. That didn't really work out as much. And so I think it was just I don't know, a happenstance, a coincidence when Don Operario came to UNC
Mm.
and I'm like, who is this person? And I was like, oh, he's doing HIV,
Yeah.
both in the US and globally. And I
Yeah.
was like, I want to talk to that person.
Yeah.
I remember asking you in room 300, Trinette, can I meet with the candidate
Yeah.
separately or individually? And I met with him, I think the day, like a few hours before he
Mm.
left,
Mhm.
after his campus visit. And I said, oh, I wanted to work with you because you're doing HIV work.
Yeah.
I need someone. I didn't say I need someone it's
Yeah.
with expertise, but because your profile and he's doing work in the Philippines. And I'm like, I've wanted to do
Wow.
what you're doing. And so he said, get back to me after the holidays. And then I started, and then we've been working since then. I think it's been, I don't know how many years now, 6, 7. I don't remember. I don't even
Wow.
remember.
Wow.
But yeah, I have been
Wow.
working with him on a number of projects, and he's really helped me create a very competitive, profile
Mhm.
with the NIH
Mhm.
because of his success, and he was willing to share it.
Yeah.
He's not somebody who would just, oh, I don't want to share this, right? And that's when you can see like this person is a good mentor
Yeah.
because he would share, okay, this is my previous proposal, read it, see how it's written. So those are the things that really help me. Like, oh, okay, so this is how you're doing it, how you're writing it.
Yeah. Yes, and so did he mentor you, Rain, as you were writing your R21?
Yeah, so
Okay.
when I write my R21 was actually based on a study that I proposed for the Center for AIDS Research Adelante program. It's focusing on HIV prevention and treatment among Latino communities in the United States.
Mhm.
And when I submitted it, I had Carol Golan provided feedback and another faculty member from School of Public Health.
Mhm.
That particular project didn't wasn't funded,
Mhm.
And so at that time, it just was a great coincidence that Dawn came and I said, "Oh, I have this idea, I have this proposal. I want to submit it as an R21. Can you help?" And
Mhm.
so that's where, he helped me with the writing, with how to frame the specific aims, the clarity, just having somebody with experience, both as a grant writer and a reviewer,
Mhm.
right? So that really,
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
helped me
Mhm.
because especially but back then in social work, I don't think we had as much support for NIH, writing proposals for the NIH. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hearing so many lessons and great tips. I hope the readers, the listeners are listening and taking notes because, Rain, I'm hearing how you saw someone who had similar research area as yours, an amazing background, and you chose to take the initiative to ask to meet with him. You didn't sit back and hope that people would connect you with him. You didn't sit and look from afar. You chose to take the initiative, go out of your way to meet with him and ask for time. So I think that's an important lesson is it is okay, it is advisable that people find mentors wherever they are and reach out to them. I think I am honestly, I say this all the time, like the queen of a cold email. I will email someone and say, "Hi, you do great work. I would love to meet with you." And I think that's one of the lessons that I'm hearing from your story is don't be afraid to reach out.
Don't be afraid. Absolutely, especially if you see a great fit between what you're doing and where this person or the thing that this person has done
Yeah,
in their career.
yeah,
Because, yeah, like you said, I mean, they can only say no, or they can say, "Sorry, I'm busy." But, like in my case, and it seems like also in your case, those kind of, making the initiative to reach out to someone has paid off.
yes, yeah.
And yeah, so yes, it does. I think yes, it's still a very effective, it's an evidence-based strategy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so funny, and I'm laughing at myself because yeah, it's just one of those funny things, like, only the 2 of us would laugh at that probably. That's what I'm laughing. So, yeah, no, I agree, and another lesson that I heard as you were talking was the power of being able to see a successful grant application. The example and how that really helps you to know what a funder is looking for, to know the structure, to know maybe some of the language. And so being, I guess, positioned and comfortable enough to ask people if they are okay sharing maybe part of their grant application with you.
Yes, yes. Yes, that's very helpful because when I was writing my R21, I think another professor shared with me a successful R21, but it was very medical. I'm
Mm,
like, this does not, I mean, the methods,
yeah,
the significant, everything, the innovation, this does not relate to social
yeah,
and behavioral science. I'm
yeah,
like, how is this going to work?
yeah,
And then when I see more, when I saw, okay, so this is how a social and behavioral
yeah,
science proposal looks like, the
yeah.
approach, the methods, the story that you tell, and how it should be arranged chronologically. And I think in addition to that, having seen a successful proposal, I was also very clear to my mentor that please provide as much feedback,
Mhm.
to make sure that you're not going to be offended if
Yeah,
they have a
yeah,
lot of red
yeah,
line and track
yeah,
changes.
yeah,
I was like, please, I'm new, I haven't done this before. I think it will be very helpful
yeah,
if
yes.
you and it doesn't mean that they can't say it in a very constructive way, right? I mean, there's a difference between
Mhm.
I will provide you feedback constructively and people who are just, mean and will just not provide constructively like some reviewers
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I
Mhm.
think that's another really important tip for people is to, be receptive to feedback, to desire feedback. Right now, I have a friend who's a colleague and a friend who does not like feedback. And they, even as a student, they would tell their professors and mentors that they did not like feedback and that they needed to be careful how they gave them feedback. And so I think my experience is the more receptive you are to feedback, the further you'll go and the quicker you'll get there, right? Because mentors are able to save you from a lot of mistakes that you would make on your own. And so I always try to encourage people to listen, accept feedback. It will help you if you're willing to listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think related to that too, you reminded me, I know that, in academia, egos are just exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
But it's knowing that it's important and it's okay to seek senior investigators or someone who is ahead of you, or even if it's like a year, a couple of years, and someone who have been successful, because that's where we will learn. And I think I've seen some of some folks I know that because they don't reach out or they don't go outside their comfort zone,
Yeah.
there's no learning
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to learn if you are the most senior in that group, yet you're not even, you know, tenured, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like you need to get out of that comfort zone,
Yeah.
be comfortable with getting feedback,
Yes.
because that's what's going to make you successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's reminding me of just so many quotes that I've heard before, like, "If you're the smartest one in the room, that's a problem," right? "If you're the smartest one on your team, that's a problem." Um, and, you always wanna make sure that your team are contributing yeah, so I think you really wanna be careful about how you build your team, how you build your mentoring team as well. Yeah, this is really excellent feedback. And so, Ray, I wanna go back maybe to your R21 where you talked about how the first time you submitted it, it was not scored? Was it scored?
So I submitted it to a different,
Okay,
so the origin of that proposal,
okay,
but the actual R21 that I submitted the first time, it was scored.
okay,
Gosh, it got a good. It was in the I think it was in this 20 plus percentile. I think
okay. So
it got scored. Uh-huh.
okay, so the original application is the one that you said was not funded, is that right? And then you changed it with Ray with
Yeah, I changed it. I dropped some of the components based on the feedback that I
Yeah,
received and
yeah.
made it more manageable or less
So
ambitious.
that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about was how we
Mhm.
handle rejection. Because
Oh yeah.
if you are on this journey, you will experience rejection. Your
Many times.
right? Manuscripts, grants,
Yeah.
at some point, right? Many times, exactly, many times. And so with you, it sounds like you chose not to stop. You chose to reach out to find mentors, reach out to your mentors, ask them to read it, incorporate their
Mhm.
feedback, and then find another home. Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's absolutely what I did, because prior to this R21, I have not submitted an NIH grant.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know the process, what
Mhm.
it's like, the all the things, all the attachments, everything that goes with writing a proposal. And so it helped that I had some mini grant writing experience through that proposal. And then when I send it to my mentor, it's like, okay, this is how we can reframe it. But I already have the idea, right? I think one thing to also, when we seek senior investigators, our potential mentors, is they all will also see something from the potential mentee, right? Like, oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you're doing interesting work, right? So it's also up to us to also demonstrate that, okay, there is this work. It's not that I'm going to ask you to tell me what to do. I have some ideas, but I need refinement. It needs to be refined. It needs to be, more polished. So it
Yeah.
could be scored, or it could be better, basically,
Mhm.
right? And so that's how I approach that. Yeah.
Mhm. And so when you think about the very first grant application that you ever submitted,
Mhm.
um, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
It's okay not to be, not to do everything all at once.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think I it's big. I don't know. I think. Oh, and I've received this from many of my mentors. Rain, you always propose too much.
Okay.
You always want to do a lot,
Yeah.
and I think that's the social work background sometimes. And it's like, well, I mean, we've done the problem so much, studying of the problem, can we do something?
Yeah.
But sometimes, particularly NIH, right? They don't always lend to that kind of perspective
Mm.
because it's science. And so you
Yeah.
have to show that you're doing this systematically, methodically, and you're not jumping from, one agenda or one specific aim to another without showing, well, you haven't even completed B, you want to go to C and D, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think part of the overly ambitious aim is also not being clear, right? Because I think sometimes
Ah.
my experience has been it's overly ambitious. I'm planning to do a lot that there are a lot of steps that I have forgotten. And so it makes reading the article really confusing. Or, there are a lot of vague, like when reviewers look at like the first proposal, early proposals, there's always questioning about what is the focus, right?
Mhm.
Is this feasible,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So those are the early lessons I've learned about writing brand. And it is okay to propose. I mean, I'm not saying that propose something that, very minimal, but
Yeah.
right, finding the balance
Yes.
between very ambitious and one that is still ambitious but doable, but feasible.
Yeah. And so it sounds like because I was wondering, like, how do you find that balance? But it sounds
Mhm.
like part of it is really thinking about whether or not it's feasible.
Yes.
Okay.
Thinking of whether it can be done. Like, for
Mhm.
example, with sample sizes, right?
Mhm.
We're not recruiting college students, so we're not going to get the N that typical researchers working with university students will get,
Yes.
especially in the populations what we work with, right? If we
Mhm.
keep adding more, eligibility criteria, the sample size or the potential pool of sample gets smaller and smaller.
Yes.
And so if we're proposing, like n equals 100 for an exploratory study, and somebody might question, somebody with more experience working with that population would say, you're not going to be able to find those 100 within 2 years because it's just not feasible to recruit them,
Yeah.
especially if, say, you don't have a community partners,
Yeah.
right? Like, how are you going to encourage? So those are the things that I've learned over
Yeah.
time to, you know, speak with your mentors. They will provide you feedback. Community partners, get to know them a little bit more and observe what they're doing so they can provide with, okay, this is a manageable sample,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And proposing interventions too, right? Because it's a lot of work. Sometimes we think that, oh, we can just pilot or develop and pilot test an intervention within a couple of years. Sometimes, yes, but in many cases, right, it takes a lot of time, especially when we're trying to adapt it for a different context. And so,
Yes.
those are some of the things I've learned over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very helpful.
What a powerful conversation today with Rain. Well, in part two, Rain shares his strategies for writing strong NIH proposals, staying focused, and navigating challenges without losing heart. Trust me, you are going to want to hear this next part. Stay tuned next week. Thank you for listening to Grant Writing Made Clear. I hope today's episode gave you inspiration, confidence, and clear information that you can turn into action. Remember, you are not alone. There's a whole community here striving for the same impact. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a quick review to help more people find the show, and share this episode with others in your network. It really does make a difference. For more grant writing tips and resources, follow me on social media. Until next time, keep showing up, keep learning, and remain determined. I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye for now.